2019 was certainly a year that was full of surprises. There was a lot of expectations that we had going into the year, and they were certainly fulfilled thanks to Congress. As we look forward to 2020, it's really going to be a critical year for conservatives. We've got to defend President Trump. You got the 2020 elections. The year's just going to be packed with a lot of excitement. So I really want to take this week and take a closer look at 2020. I'm your host, Jared Dyson. This is the Closet Conservative Podcast. It has certainly been an interesting year. It's really hard to believe this is the last podcast of 2019, and I want to start off saying thank you to everyone that listens to our podcast each week. It means a lot to us that you've taken the time to listen and follow our podcast, so thank you so much for making this year what it was. If you haven't already, please go to one of our outlets and subscribe to the podcast. This makes sure that you're going to get all the latest episodes each week. You can find it on Apple Podcast, Google, YouTube, Spotify. There's a lot of other places you can find it. You can do an internet search and find the Closet Conservative Podcast in a lot of locations. Once you subscribe, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating. That helps us, and we certainly appreciate it. It really helps us as we are trying to grow the podcast and trying to reach as many people as we can reach. So thank you for subscribing, and thank you for leaving us that 5-star rating. 2019 was certainly an interesting year, and we knew it was going to be interesting because of the new Democratic Congress, and they certainly did not let us down. From wasting time with these horrible investigations and the 2 horrible articles of impeachment, they have continued to just waste time and tax dollars. It's just absolutely horrific, the things that they've done. This is time they could have been spending serving American interests, but they were more interested in their own pockets. It was time they could have been investigating corruption and showing that they were interested in rooting it out of their own party, but they decided that they would rather continue to support it and continue to allow it to happen. Congress upheld their promise of impeaching President Trump. We knew that going into the year that was their goal. It was certainly a failure in that for Congress to do their jobs. They were so focused on impeaching Trump that they forgot to serve their constituents. They forgot that they were serving Americans. It's truly disappointing, but it was expected given these Democrats who were elected. Obviously, AOC did not disappoint with all of her insanity throughout the year, and in all actuality, all of the squad members provided us with some sort of entertainment throughout the entire year. And speaking of entertainment, you can't cross that subject without talking about President Trump. You can't help but laugh thinking about some of his tweets and comments in his interactions with the Democrats. Every time my phone alerts when he sends out a new tweet, I get a little nervous about what he's going to say. He managed impeachment well. He's looking very strong going into 2020, and I think he has himself positioned well, and the poll numbers are showing it. His approval rating has been going up. Some of the more recent polls over at Real Clear Politics show that he's actually winning some of these head-to-head matchups with the Democratic challengers he may face. Of course, you're not going to hear any of that positive stuff from the Democrats and the media. All throughout 2019, the media proved who it sides with. They continue to be cozy with the Democrats and their progressive agenda. So where does this lead us going into 2020? Well, I think you obviously have to start looking into January to see what the House is going to do with these articles of impeachment. Nancy Pelosi continues to hold these as a power play to try to force her will on the Senate. This will not work for her, of course. I actually wrote about this earlier in the week over at the website where I talked about the delivery of the articles. The articles are not required in the Senate to actually conduct the investigation if you look at the Constitution. The Constitution only states that the Senate is the only one that can conduct the investigation. Everything else is procedural rules, and we all know that those can be simply changed with a vote by Mitch McConnell in the Senate. The Republicans have enough votes to overturn any procedural rules with a simple majority. But I think you're going to see the Democrats cave on their demands for these trial witnesses. We know that Chuck Schumer's been pushing for certain select witnesses to go to the Senate, but I think they're going to stop that push because if they continue to push, then the Republicans are most likely going to try to call Biden's, Adam Schiff, and others to testify in a trial, and that's not going to benefit the Democrats one bit. The last thing they need is their leading candidate to admit to corruption in front of the Senate during his time as vice president. It's already looking dim for Biden with the recent investigations into his son. When you add in his brother and China and all the other pieces into the conversation, it really could spell a lot of trouble for him and for the Democrats going forward. Another thing I'm really watching closely is the continuing investigations into President Trump. I question the approach that they're making towards this. If the charges were good enough the first time, why do you need more? Now, the Democrats obviously know that the Senate's going to acquit Trump, but they want to keep the pressure on Trump and the negative press going into the election. The negative press is what's really helped the Democrats right now, and it's driving the media and giving them stories to talk about Trump. Negative press is the only way that the Democrats may be able to convince people to abandon Trump. Why do I say that? Well, because the majority of Americans continue to believe that they are better off since Trump got into office. They are making more money. They are more secure in their jobs. I mean, you can simply look at the poll data and it proves it. Sure, they may not like Trump, but he's doing a great job for their wallets and for their families. He's got the economy growing at a crazy rate. They're keeping more money due to the tax cuts. Democrats know that the only way to defeat Trump is to make him appear so horrible that it's worth sacrificing your personal good to get him out of the office. Now, you've heard some of these people talk about that sometimes you have to sacrifice for the greater good. That is exactly what these Democrats are trying to push. It's the only way that they can push through socialism and these unpopular ideas with Americans. Obviously, we have the 2020 elections to watch closely next year. While I am increasingly confident in President Trump and his upcoming re-election, I am specifically watching the House and the Senate. I do believe there is a Supreme Court nomination at stake in the next few years, given Ruth Bader Ginsburg's health, and losing the Senate could be a big deal as well. If Republicans can hold the Senate and flip the House back to the Republican side, it's a huge win for the country. If you look at any of the recent news articles, socialism just received a major blow in the UK with their recent elections. And I'm hoping to see the same thing in the US during the 2020 elections. I think that healthcare is going to be the big topic in the election, and I expect that the Democrats and Republicans are all going to roll out big health plans in the coming year. We know the Democrats will continue to push for Medicare for all, but it's not popular, and Americans seem to continue to favor their private health care. And Republicans can really capitalize on this if they roll out a plan that addresses a lot of the health care concerns. Survey after survey continually shows that it remains the number one or number two topic for Americans as they're considering their vote in 2020. Some of the other topics, such as gun violence and abortion, they're definitely going to remain topics of talk, but I truly believe that health care is a concern for both sides. It's a concern for Democrats and Republicans alike. I really think this is something that can be addressed in the election cycle and could be a sticking point for Republicans going forward. Gun violence and abortion are polarizing topics, while healthcare is something that everyone's concerned about. There's a lot of state races that I'm watching closely as well. I don't go into great depths in the state races because we try to cover national politics, but there's some tight races in some of these battleground states that's going to be interesting outside of just the presidential election. Our home state of North Carolina has a governor's race that's shaping up to be very interesting, and we have a potential Senate battle depending on who the Democrats nominate, as one of our senators is pretty unpopular right now. We are also watching some other states closely. Arizona, New Mexico, Michigan, Wisconsin. All of them have some interesting races that are going to be worth watching as we go into 2020. I'm also very interested to see how Justin Amash and Jeff Van Drew will do after their party switches during this last year. Lastly, I'm really excited about some growth and changes for us going into 2020. While you've come to know us for the Closet Conservative podcast and the Closet Conservative website, we have some really exciting expansion going on into 2020 with some new programs and new delivery options. The Closet Conservative is part of the Premier Media Group, and 2020 will see the launch of additional podcast programs and potentially a new website delivery as well. We are going to be extremely excited to share some of these details with you in the coming days about the new deliveries. We have some exciting partners and sponsors coming on board in 2020. We've got some really cool things we're looking at in regards to potential subscription services and retail product offerings and expansions in that arena as well. It's really going to be an exciting time for us, and I'm really glad that you're here with us to take part in this journey. We are so thankful for your support and in helping us grow over the last year. Without you, none of this would be possible. Like I mentioned before, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Google, YouTube, or any of the other places you might obtain podcasts. It's going to make sure you hear those latest episodes and shows as they come out. We'll talk about these new shows as they're coming out as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And also hit that 5-star rating. Like I said before, it really helps us a lot. If you own a business or you have a product you're interested in sponsoring the podcast or interested in being a sponsor on our website, there's information over at our website about that as well. closetconservative.net. You can go over and click that, and it talks about all of those different options. Lastly, if you're just a person and you want to make sure that you help preserve free speech and conservative speech, you can make a donation to help the Closet Conservative as we move forward into 2020. Without you and without your support, we wouldn't be here. So thank you so much for what you did in 2019, and we are so excited and looking into 2020 and what's ahead. Can't wait to see you in 2020. I wish you all a safe and happy new year.
This is the Closet Conservative Podcast. All material copyright The Closet Conservative. Music courtesy of Greg Shields Music. Remember to subscribe to our podcast to receive all the latest episodes. We can also be found online at closetconservative.net or on Facebook and Twitter.